So we're kind of going through this in a little bit of a backwards way. I'd like each of you to take just a minute or two to explain your project. And Brian, let's start with you again.
Okay, so NXT is a 100% proof-of-stake cryptocurrency that operates on its own blockchain, and one of the features that is being developed right now is called the Next Asset Exchange. And the Next Asset Exchange, once released on the mainnet, once it's all tested and fully debugged, will allow gateways to build on top of the asset exchange to allow. At this point, there's been a proof of use case of a fully automated multi-signature cryptocurrency gateway that has transferred Dogecoin into the Next Asset Exchange running on testnet and transferred it back out of the Next Asset Exchange back into the real world Doge wallet. So that type of
Let me ask a follow-up on that. So what you're saying is that somebody transferred Doge into NXT where it was represented by an NXT asset for Doge, and then somebody traded it back out. And so in that way, people were able to trade Doge on an entirely decentralized peer-to-peer exchange?
Yes.
Okay, that's different.
So as just a proof of use case that has been demonstrated so far.
So the case with Mastercoin and the Master Protocol is a similar use case, but on top of the Bitcoin cryptographic ledger. And so with Master Protocol, and Master is just an acronym for metadata archived by standard transaction embedding records, and that's exactly what it does. It's embedding records in the Bitcoin ledger using these standard transaction types, and you're interpreting that metadata to say, oh, that's not a regular Bitcoin transaction, that's a Dogecoin token or a Purecoin token or one of the user currencies that people have created using Master Protocol that could represent sort of any different type of project. For instance, MaidStay for storage, if they issue their user currencies on top of the Master Protocol, all the Master Protocol wallets will be able to recognize that transaction as a particular token and somebody's sending that from one place to another. And so that's really at the heart is the decentralized exchange that's recently been launched. And the next thing is the user currencies. And it's all on top of Bitcoin. So the interesting thing that creates is if Bitcoin is successful as a general cryptographic ledger, we'll see more and more assets, more and more tokens built on top of the ledger, really adding an enormous amount of value to Bitcoin itself, expanding Bitcoin from today a currency and a payment network to a secure cryptographic ledger. And that really makes it a lot more like the internet than like email. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
Yeah, it's a good thing that the analogy between the internet and email brought up, because one of the ways that I like explaining Ethereum is actually talking about specifically the internet. So if you look at the internet back in the 1990s, we had this language called HTML. Started off by let's have text web pages, and then HTML came out with things like specific features, things like paragraphs, underlining, bold. At some point, we decided, oh, hey, static content isn't good enough. People want to be able to do forms. So HTML came up with a specific feature that allowed you to do forms inside of HTML. You could fill out forms, you could submit them, and they'll go straight to the server and so forth. So with Ethereum, then, however, in 2000, around 2000, Brendan Eich came out with this programming language called JavaScript. And the idea is that instead of having this internet protocol suite with dozens and dozens of features on top of it, let's just have the internet or the web with a programming language built in, so you can build whatever features you want on top. And since then, we've seen people have built Gmail on top of JavaScript. People have built Facebook on top of JavaScript. People have built Bitcoin wallets on top of JavaScript. All these applications that Brendan Eich never even thought of are possible just because he created this protocol that contained this universal programming language that allows you to do everything. So Ethereum basically takes that exact same idea and brings it to the world of cryptocurrency. So it's this sort of generalized contract network where you can encode any kind of arbitrary rules, any arbitrary transaction types you want, just any financial contract, decentralized storage, make your own currency, just by defining exactly what they are in the programming language and putting it on the blockchain.
So why not use Bitcoin? And to David, why use Bitcoin? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? And Vitalik, let's start with you.
Okay. So There's two different ways we could have used Bitcoin. So one way is, okay, let's take Bitcoin as it stands today and let's try and make slight modifications to it. The thing is that Bitcoin does have a built-in scripting language, but it's very limited. So one of the big limitations, for example, is that transactions, they don't really have state. So a transaction can be spent or it can be unspent. There's no way to use that to make some kind of like complicated 5-step contract, right? Or like 5-step financial contract, or even like a sub-currency that has as much state as you want. So the other approach is to do something like covered coins or Counterparty or any of these other ones in Mastercoin and say, let's use the Bitcoin blockchain as a data layer. So it's a good approach. In fact, one fun fact is that the original Ethereum white paper back around November 27th actually had the Ethereum protocol running on top of Primecoin. I think the biggest reason to do it independently is just a matter of scalability. So there are a lot of, so with some of these protocols, if you do it on the Bitcoin blockchain, in order to figure out what the current state of the system is, you have to process every single transaction. Whereas if you do it on your own network, then you can actually use mechanisms like Merkle trees and allow people and allow various different kinds of like caching and optimization to happen so you can have secure light clients that know exactly what just a particular part of the state that they care about.
So you want to reinvent the wheel?
Yes, we want to reinvent the wheel and make it better.
Okay.
Well, and I think that analogy of programming languages is a really good one, and one I often use. People ask me, well, aren't you competitors with this or this project? And I try to remind people that these are all open source projects, and that whatever best practices emerge, everyone else will copy. That's how open source works. That's how it should work. And so I think of these more as programming languages that have different strengths and have different weaknesses. For the particular features of the master protocol, we wanted to build on top of the largest, most secure cryptographic ledger, and today, that's Bitcoin. Master protocol doesn't have to forever stay only on Bitcoin. There's already been discussion around the devs about partnering with Ethereum to build on top of their platform, partnering with MadeSafe to build on top of their platform. So I think this will exist. It's sort of like asking, are you only going to do this app for iPhone? No, I'll do it for Android too. Maybe I'll do it for other platforms. There's no reason we can't leverage sort of all those capabilities based on the different platforms that get built. And so, but again, for the particular features of the master protocol, they were straightforward enough, decentralized exchange of tokens, defining assets, that the fastest and clearest path to success was to do this on top of the Bitcoin ledger in a way that fits into their existing architecture. And hey, if Ethereum gives us awesome advanced features, wonderful. That's great. We will, make sure our wallet and everything integrates with them and can take advantage of those features as those roll out. But there's sort of this race to do the decentralized exchange, and one of the ways we got there very quickly was by using an existing ledger and an existing blockchain.
Well, let me follow up with that real quickly. You're doing a decentralized exchange, and I've been playing around with some of the Bitcoin-based decentralized exchanges, and I noticed that while a 10-minute blockchain, 10-minute block time is really, really fast when you compare it to a wire transfer, when you compare it to trying to trade on a trading platform, it's incredibly slow.
Sure.
So, do you think that's a problem for Bitcoin in the medium term?
Not necessarily. Bitcoin is never, or not in the near term, going to be a high-frequency trading platform. It's not designed that way. It's meant as a cryptographic ledger. And so I think, gentleman mentioned earlier, best way I would do that today is I would do it off-chain, and every periodic amount of time, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, I would merge those records into the blockchain. And now, even if my high-frequency trading fails, I've got the records as of 10 minutes ago that I know are stored in the secure cryptographic ledger. And so I think it makes sense more to use something like open transactions or another thing that's meant to act at a very fast pace and do that off-chain and then merge those records.
Are these solutions, what's what I'm looking for here? Do they require us to trust you?
So the best that you can offer off-chain today is a federated model. So if you look at OT as an example, you create a pool of servers, and it would be very, very difficult to take over all of those servers in order to fake a transaction. So they have a high level of security, but I would still want to merge into the ledger to get an even better level of security. What I'd really like to see is somebody take these federated systems for OT and other systems and figure out a way to fully decentralize them. I think that's going to come. I think it's going to require identification protocols. It's going to require reputation protocols. It's going to need other elements before you can fully do that process.
I think it's interesting that the Java technology being referenced as the enabler of the internet applies directly to the coding of the NXT ecosystem, because NXT core is coded in Java as opposed to Bitcoin, which is coded in C. And in addition, Bitcoin has, I'm sure as everyone knows, a 10-minute blockchain generation time, whereas NXT has a 1-minute blockchain generation time. And in addition, the average cost of a Bitcoin transaction right now is $32 approximately, and that can be found on blockchain.info and is a result of the competitive securing of the Bitcoin network via all of these ASICs and via proof of work. And so NXT provides a significant energy saving advantage over the long term, as well as a faster block generation time.
So how does it accomplish that?
Every single node on the network has to agree every single minute which node will process the next block. So
it's another way to find consensus.
Correct.
Okay.
Proof of stake.
Yeah, proof of stake.
And how long has NXT actually been working in practice?
NXT has been in existence for about 4 months now.
4 months.
Proof of stake was just thought of probably 6 months ago.
Huh. Interesting. So, the legal landscape is interesting. These are all global projects, and again, there are differing approaches to kind of dealing with this. So let's start with you, Brian. Change the paradigm, conform to the paradigm, or completely avoid the paradigm, and how?
NXT is a completely decentralized network. There are no leaders, and at the core, it cannot be stopped, just like Bitcoin cannot be stopped. The blockchain will continue to roll on, will continue to generate new blocks as long as there is incentive to the members of the network.
So do you have any plans to interface with regulators, or has that even been discussed within it, or is this just outside?
Well, the core provides extensibility to other programmers. So other programmers can build gateways, as I described, onto the next asset exchange. And so those gateway providers would fully integrate with the regulations, know your customer, anti-money laundering laws, etc. And so at the core, the system will run no matter what and is not beholden to regulation. The providers that build on top of the core can choose to come into compliance where they need to come into compliance, or choose not to.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. Bitcoin has given us a really good example of how to operate these type of projects. Bitcoin is an open source tool, it's global, and it's not trying to do compliance on a global level with the open source. It's just an open source tool set. And any operator can take that Bitcoin protocol and use it in their particular jurisdiction to run an exchange, run a business, and it's up to the operator in that jurisdiction to comply with their local regulations. And so that's part of why Bitcoin has been so successful. You can see people have taken the Bitcoin protocol and you build an exchange in China, different than you build an exchange in the United States, different than you build an exchange in Europe. And so it's given people that flexibility to do compliance in their local jurisdiction, but have access to this open source platform that give them all the tools they need. And so I think that's really important. I talk a lot about that idea of not, instead of trying to do global compliance, which is really tough as a startup and as a new project, but doing local compliance and just leaving the top level as an open source protocol. When it comes to people issuing the tokens, the frame I like to think about is, imagine I wanted to develop a new video game. And I went on to a website and said, hey, everybody that wants to support this new video game can send me $10. And I will give you the first password to this new video game. All the people that support it will get this new password. I collect the money, I do the work. 6 months later, I release the video game, and all the people that gave me participated in my initial crowd sale of the video game get access. That's a really good frame to think about this, because when people offer tokens, they are literally giving them, all their participants, a private key, which is the same as a password, right? They're getting a password that accesses this particular application. And people associate a value with that password because now anybody with that password can access this new application. But I think from a framework on the regulatory side, that's how I think about this. It is a crowd sale. It's very much sort of a crowd activity that's participating in accessing these applications, because there's such a broad array of things that people will use this for.
Yeah, well, one of the problems, I think, is that even though we might think that all we're doing is just pre-selling tokens, you do have to keep in mind that the regulators might think in a different way, especially if you go around and promote it as a massive investment opportunity. Yep. So I think there definitely is room for compliance of some kind, and it's not as much of a problem with Bitcoin because it's a completely anonymous project. But on the other hand, if you go with some kind of fundraising approach, then it is something that you do have to think about. That is one of the costs that come with the benefits. So, unless it's possible to gain the benefits of that paradigm while still keeping the whole thing completely decentralized with no central parties whatsoever, but that's, I think, a challenge that's still...
So anybody interested in this area, I'd encourage you to check out CODA, is the consortium of decentralized applications. This includes Mastercoin, Colored Coins, BitShares, Ethereum, Open Transactions. We're all getting together, people in these Bitcoin 2.0 areas, and saying, let's pool our resources to do legal work, do regulatory work, and figure out what are the goes and what are the no-goes in this area so we can all be smart. We want to do this in an intelligent way that complies with all the jurisdictions.
Sure. Yeah. So we have 5 minutes left. We didn't get through all my questions. I'm sorry we're not going to have time to take questions from the audience. I want to get kind of broad and visionary here for a second and talk about what this ecosystem looks like 5 years out or 2 years out if you succeed with what you're attempting to do. What does the world look like? Let's start with you, Vitalik.
Yeah, I mean, with Ethereum, we're not real. I think in the long term, we don't even need to necessarily know all that much about us. People don't go around talking all that much about something like TCP/IP, or people talk about the applications on top of it. So that's like in the long term, people aren't necessarily going to be writing contracts, even in our Python code, which to be fair is much easier to use than the fourth scripting language that comes with Bitcoin. Like in the long term, people are going to be using apps, and the job is to create a way that allows you to sort of take all this Ethereum, all this smart contract functionality, package it up into tools which are simultaneously user-friendly, easy to use, but also in the background have all of the security assurances that decentralized consensus technology provides. So, it'll basically look just like your iPhone, except you have the reassurance that it's actually secure on the back end.
So I'll take this opportunity to coin Johnston's law. Johnston's law is as follows: everything that can be decentralized will be decentralized. That's the vision here. I look at this as the entire tech stack, and we're still at the early days where we're decentralizing data and storage and bandwidth. But once we have those elements in the next few months, we can build more and more advanced protocols and decentralized systems on top of those basic elements. So I think we can take all the existing hierarchy or centralized systems and one by one decentralize them using this type of technology. I'm not saying it's a model that applies to everything, but those things that can be decentralized, that it makes economic sense, they will be, I think, over the coming years. Okay,
you still have 60 seconds on your answer, so I actually want to press you with a further question. Sure. What do you think the single most exciting project is that you are looking at that is on the 2.0 use case side? 50 seconds.
Number 1, MadeSafe. Number 2, Ethereum. Number 3, Open Garden. That is my compute MadeSafe is my storage, and OpenGarden is my mesh network that gives me decentralized bandwidth.
And the thing that ties these together is tokens.
Tokens tie it together because it lets us monetize the use of these applications without an arbitrary fee or profit margin built in. And so we're working with OpenGarden to create a white paper that brings together how you tokenize their system and incentivize people to share the internet. Ethereum's doing a great job with how do we incentivize scripting and consensus around that. The MadeSafe guys, I think, have done an incredible job. And I'll put it this way. I got on a plane and I went to Scotland to meet all their developers. And I was really, really impressed. I think they'll talk more publicly about what they're doing in April at the New York conference. But yeah, those are the three things that I'm really excited about.
Thank you, David. Okay, NXT has the last 90.
So the NXT network in the future will have a fully operational asset exchange, and on that asset exchange will be the gateways I described previously. And so these gateways could operate in any country. They could be fully regulated, or they could be running anonymity protocol like the Zero Cash protocol from Johns Hopkins University. And so these are applications that are being worked on right now, and additional uses of the next decentralized cryptocurrency ecosystem is the reanimation of dead capital that is not able to be titled or sold because people don't have access to the financial services, and it's largely due to the excessive costs of old analog-style banking.
Can you expand on that a little bit in 27 seconds?
I can try. So most of the world has not experienced the internet yet at this point. Even though the internet's 25 years old, it still needs to be secured, and most of the world still has not experienced the benefits of it. So as we go forward, decentralized applications will provide the avenue to be able to deliver safe and secure solutions to the rest of the world.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Foundation is a non-profit charitable giving organization leveraging the power of the Bitcoin community to improve public health and the environment worldwide. Help us demonstrate the significant impact of Bitcoin in addressing these critical issues on a global scale. Support international giving in Bitcoin. Please visit our website at www.bitgivefoundation.org. That's www.bitgivefoundation.org.